Growing up as a kid, yeah. All a nigga wanna have was a Burberry scarf and $3 in my pocket. Instead I got beat with a switch, but I don't give a fuck, but it's on my body. Scars all up on me, but I run around from.
What is up, everybody? It's JT Sportsman at you guys with another video. This video, I'm here with my Los Angeles Rams 2020 halfback preview. I'm going to be previewing and going over the halfbacks that are currently on the Rams roster. Who starts, what the depth chart looks like, who makes the roster, who doesn't make the roster, all that good stuff. Before I get into it, make sure that you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel because I upload NFL videos and college football videos daily. Also, make sure to follow me on all of my social media platforms down in the description and the link down below. It will take you to my Instagram and my Twitter, which is JTSports_. So, when you look at this Rams group of halfbacks, it's going to be really weird not seeing Todd Gurley line up in a Rams uniform. Now, they got a lot of young halfbacks. That we don't really know how good they are. Now, the first guy we got to talk about Cam Akers. Now, Cam Akers was drafted in this past year's NFL draft by the Rams. He was their first pick this year because they didn't have a first round pick, so he was basically their first selection. They drafted him out at FSU. He's 5'10", 217 pounds, and I really like Cam Akers a lot. Now, Cam Akers was basically the whole entire Florida State offense last year. If you watched college football and you watched the Seminoles play last year, the offensive line was bad. The quarterback play wasn't all that great. So, I mean, basically, Cam Akers was that team. Now, he played behind a really bad offensive line. That FSU offensive line was not great, and I think that's going to help him out a lot. When you play behind the offensive line that isn't that great, you learn to improvise, you learn to do a lot of things. And I feel Cam Akers playing behind that bad offensive line that he had to work with at FSU is going to help him out a lot when it comes to him translating into the NFL, because this Rams offensive line should be a lot better compared to what he had to work with. Now, the thing that I like about Cam Akers is a guy who is basically a touchdown waiting to happen. Like, this guy's a threat to take it to the house every time that he touches the football. And the thing with him is that he's very explosive. I mean, he's just a very shifty, stick your foot in the ground, gone, basically. He also has a little bit of power to him as well. He's not a guy that you can just expect to, get an easy tackle on. He can run over you as well. So he has a little bit of shiftiness to him. He reminds me a lot of Maurice Jones-Drew. I don't know if a lot of you guys remember Maurice Jones-Drew, but Maurice Jones-Drew was basically one of the best halfbacks in the NFL during his time with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He kind of has that Maurice Jones-Drew feel to him. Now, he doesn't kind of have like the size of a Maurice Jones-Drew and things like that, but when you watch the way that he runs and the way that he plays, he reminds me a lot of Maurice Jones-Drew. Like, Maurice Jones-Drew was very short and things like that, but he was a guy who was very elusive. He was also very powerful as well. He could run over you as well, just as he could, hit you with a quick juke move or a quick spin move. So he kind of reminds me a little bit of Maurice Jones-Drew. Now, will he be the starting halfback going into this season? I don't really know. Now, you got Darrell Henderson. Now, Darrell Henderson, I think, in my opinion, will probably end up starting the season out as the RB1 because he knows the playbook a little bit better. He knows the protections a little bit better compared to Cam Akers. And Darrell Henderson, he had a pretty... disappointing rookie year, to say the least. Like, I expect a little bit more touches out of Darrell Henderson. He only had 39 carries for 147 rushing yards, and he averaged 3.8 yards per attempt. And I was really expecting just a little bit more out of Darrell Henderson. I don't know if he has some injury concerns or something like that, but I just expect a little bit more out of Darrell Henderson with the whole arthritis injury that Todd Gurley was working with and how the Rams were going to limit his carries. I was really expecting Darrell Henderson to kind of have a better rookie season. I wasn't expecting him to have like an incredible rookie year, anything like that. But I was expecting him to have a lot better of a rookie year than what he had last year. So going in, I think he probably has to be the RB1 because he knows the playbook, he knows the protections and things like that. And the thing with Darrell Henderson is that I still think Darrell Henderson, despite the fact that he didn't really see that many opportunities last year, I think this is a guy who could end up breaking out, because Darrell Henderson is kind of like Cam Akers in a little bit of that aspect. Like, these guys are both explosive halfbacks. Like, they can basically, they're a threat to take it to the end zone every single time they touch the ball, especially Darrell Henderson. I mean, Darrell Henderson's highlight tape at Memphis is absolutely off the freaking chains, man. It seems like he was having big play after big play after big play. This guy was just a guy who you just get a ball in his hands and he makes things happen. And like I said, we didn't really get to see a lot of that last season because he didn't really get all that many opportunities to touch the field. I don't know if it was injuries or anything like that, but hopefully going into this year we see a lot more of Darrell Henderson. But as of right now, I think Darrell Henderson most likely is the RB1 going into the 2020 NFL season. And like I said, this is probably going to be a halfback by committee. Like, just because somebody's a starter doesn't mean they're going to get the workload of the carries. The Rams, what they're going to do is they're going to just basically, they're going to split up snaps. One guy, maybe he gets 12 snaps, maybe another guy gets like 8 snaps, and they just roll with whoever gets the hot hand. And whoever gets the hot hand is probably going to be able to be the guy who ends up getting the buckload of the carries throughout the season as we progress throughout. So now we got Malcolm Brown. Now Malcolm Brown is a guy who, out of all the halfbacks on the Rams' current roster, he has the most experience. He's been on the Rams team for a few years now, and he had a pretty solid year. This is a guy who only had 69 carries, 255 rushing yards, but he sniffed the end zone a lot. He had 5 touchdowns, and his yards per carry was 3.7. So he had a nose for getting into the end zone. Now, will he end up making the roster? I think he should. I think he has a pretty good chance of making the roster. But in terms of how he fares in his halfback battle, I don't really see him. He'll have he's a guy, he's going to compete for that RB1 spot. I'm not saying you can count him out or anything like that, but I think overall he'll probably have to be the third halfback on my list. So I'll put him behind Cam Akers. I have Darrell Henderson at 1, Cam Akers at 2, and Malcolm Brown at 3, because I just don't think Malcolm Brown just has the talent like Cam Akers or Darrell Henderson has. And although he did, score 5 touchdowns last year, I just don't really see him making all that much of an impact this year when it comes to the Rams. I think another guy who could end up overseeding Malcolm Brown that I really like a lot could be Xavier Jones. Now, Xavier Jones was an undrafted free agent from SMU. He was 5'10", 212 pounds, and the crazy thing is that this guy didn't even get invited to the NFL Combine. Don't ask me how, don't ask me why, but this guy didn't get an invitation at all. Now, I've seen a lot of comparisons to Xavier Jones. I've seen him be compared to Reggie Bush. I've seen him being compared to LaShawn McCoy, and I see the comparisons, but when I look at his highlight tape, he reminds me a lot of DeAnthony Thomas. Now, he's not as fast as what DeAnthony Thomas was coming out of Oregon, but you kind of see the playmaking abilities and things like that. Now, I can understand a lot of people comparing him to Reggie Bush because of how agile he was when it comes to making defenders miss in the open field and things like that. I can also see LaShawn McCoy as well, because this guy has an incredible shiftiness. This guy can change directions. Basically, he can change directions on a dime. So, I think Xavier Jones, a rookie out of SMU who is undrafted, I think this is a guy who, if we even have a training camp or a preseason, which we should, this is a guy that throughout that process is going to end up over-exceeding Malcolm Brown. He's going to end up taking that number 3 spot in the halfback rotation, and I think Malcolm Brown ends up getting bumped down to number 4, because I just think Xavier Jones is just a way better halfback. And also, don't be surprised you see Xavier Jones end up getting into that halfback rotation. Don't be surprised you see this guy in the middle of the NFL season, some way, somehow, work his way up into that committee, and he ends up getting a good amount of touches as well, along with Henderson and Akers as well. So don't sleep on Xavier Jones. Xavier Jones is a sleeper. I think he ends up becoming that RB3 and ends up debunking Malcolm Brown. Now, the other halfbacks that you have John Kelly, who was on the Rams practice squad for the past 2 seasons. He got activated late in the season last year. I believe he got activated around December, I believe. So he spent a little bit of time on the 53-man roster. Then you also got James Gilbert, who was an undrafted free agent out of Kansas State. This guy is also pretty shifty and agile as well, pretty elusive. He's 5'9", 199 pounds. So overall, I'm going to end up giving you my depth chart. Like I said, I think Darrell Henderson ends up being RB1 to start the season, just because he knows the playbook a little bit better, and he's more talented than Malcolm Brown. for those of you guys who want to make that argument and be like, well, you say Darrell Henderson knows the playbook and things like that. Malcolm Brown's been on the roster longer, so wouldn't he be the starter? I mean, that Darrell Henderson is more talented than Malcolm Brown. So, RB1 for him. RB2 is Cam Akers. RB3, I think it is going to end up being Xavier Jones. I think Xavier Jones is a big sleeper. Then RB4 is probably going to be Malcolm Brown. I don't think John Kelly makes the roster. I don't think James Gilbert makes the roster neither. So let me know how you guys feel about the LA Rams halfback group going into the 2020 NFL season. Let me know who you guys' depth chart is, who ends up starting, who ends up making the roster, who doesn't make the roster. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel for more NFL videos and content. And thanks for watching.